Beautiful stylings of music. I'll share my screen.
We'll get
Beautiful stylings of music.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nur Salam.
I'll share my screen.
I'm with New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. I want to thank you, everyone, for joining this session. This is a very important.
Stylings of music.
This is a very important. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nur Salam. I'm with New York.
There seems to be an echo. Yeah, I think we need to make sure there's a second streaming.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Jermaine, is it live on YouTube? Or is muted? Perfect. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this important discussion today. My name is Nur Salam. I'm with New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. We are joined by a health professional from Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. We are going to talk about how the vaccines are produced, how they work, and also we are going to have room for questions. If you have any questions, you can utilize the chat in Zoom or also on YouTube to ask your question, and we'll definitely get to that. That being said, I would like to introduce our wonderful presenter for today, Vivian Cortez, Miss Bryce, and Dr. Malhotra from New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Vivian, please take it away.
Thank you so much for that, Nuruz. We're so excited to join you all this afternoon. Our team is committed to making sure all New Yorkers, including young people like yourselves, have the information they need to make informed decisions about the COVID-19 vaccines. So we hope we'll be able to provide you all with that information today and answer any of your questions during the Q&A. But before we get started, I'm going to invite everyone here and also on our YouTube live stream to take a minute or so to complete this very short survey. It's going to help us in our work to reach young people throughout the city in terms of educating them about COVID-19 vaccines. So the link that you see in the chat, you can click on it and complete the survey. It's anonymous and very short. So we'll give you about a minute or so for that.
And just in case anyone just joined us, I'm just going to put the quick link one more time.
Yes, thank you for that, Bryce.
Of course.
So feel free to continue filling it out. It's just about 5 or 6 questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Next slide, Bryce. So before we jump into everything we're going to cover today, we wanted to ask you all what you hope to learn about the COVID-19 vaccines. Any questions that you or other people your age might have about the COVID-19 vaccines, please feel free to type them out in the chat, and we'll elevate some of those and make sure to answer as many as we can during today's session. So feel free to interact with the chat this time. Just drop any questions you might have, any doubts, any concerns. Great, so thank you. I see a question about long-term effects. Feel free to drop any others you might have throughout the way.
Yes, anything that you'd like to know about COVID-19 vaccines.
Okay, boosters, that's another great question. Okay, so feel free to keep them coming. At minimum for the 2 that we see in the chat right now, and I know we have colleagues taking a look at the YouTube live stream as well. So you can type those in the chat as well for us so we can pay attention to what's coming in from YouTube. But we will be talking a little bit about boosters, about side effects in this presentation. Next slide. So we do want to say upfront that today's session is going to provide you all with basic information on the COVID-19 vaccine. So we'll discuss how they were tested, how they work, and the different kinds of vaccines currently available. We'll explain how to get a vaccine for yourself or a loved one if you want one. And we'll also discuss some common questions or concerns that people might have and encourage you to share what you learned today about COVID-19 vaccines. What we're not going to do is pressure you or try to convince you to get a vaccine. That we feel very strongly is your choice. And for our young people, it's your choice in partnership with your families and your loved ones. That's your choice to make, okay? But I also wanna say that because we're gonna be talking about COVID-19, that includes talking about sickness, injustices in our society, even death. And so we know it's been a very tough year for everyone. And we wanna acknowledge how hard it has been upfront. We'll also be talking about medical information, including needles and shots, since our focus is discussing the vaccines. So we encourage you to take care of yourselves however you see fit throughout this presentation. If you need to take a break, run to the restroom, grab some water, take care of yourselves because we know a lot of us have been holding a lot all year, okay? Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So to really bring this information to life and to show us how much, we all might know already about the COVID-19 vaccines, you're going to see a couple of quizzes that we've interspersed throughout the presentation. So feel free to drop in your answers in the chat. No pressure. There's no, prize or penalty for right or wrong answers. We just want to let you interact with some of this content. So this is our first question. Has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted everyone equally? What do folks think? Drop it in the chat. So B, no. Right.
Lots of no's. We have one yes.
Lots of no's. Thank you so much for engaging with us. The right answer is Bryce. Feel free to let us know.
Yes. Sorry, my thing is not advancing unless I click. Here we go.
Right. So the answer is no. The COVID-19 pandemic has not impacted everyone equally. And with COVID-19 cases currently on the rise, driven by the highly contagious Delta variant, this continues to be a concern. Black and Latino communities have had higher rates of death and hospitalization from COVID-19. And we also see that they're getting vaccinated much less when compared to other neighborhoods. So the extreme impact of this virus in lower income communities and in communities of color has been happening since the beginning of the pandemic. But it is important to know that these unfair outcomes are not the fault of people of color or communities of color, okay? That there is nothing biological that makes people of color more likely to have poor health. Next slide. Historical and present day racism is the reason for unjust outcomes in communities of color. Throughout history, and I know many of you understand this, people in power have made decisions that strategically and consistently limited people of color's access to the best resources and opportunities. So things like safe, stable housing, a high quality education, job opportunities, nutritious foods, and other resources have not been provided to communities of color in the same way that they have been in other communities. So for instance, we know which neighborhoods sometimes are exposed to more pollution because of highways and factories, or some of us might have noticed that some neighborhoods have parks with nicer playgrounds, more flowers, safer running or biking paths. These differences create unequal living experiences, and those experiences contribute to unjust outcomes in the lives of people of color, including putting one's health in jeopardy. Next slide. So to try to eliminate these injustices, like you see here, we have to do more than simply give people the same number of resources. That would be equality. Instead, we have to listen and respond to the specific needs of communities most impacted by racist policies. And we have to give more to them, which is equity, because they have been negatively impacted for so long. So to right those wrongs, we would need to prioritize these communities. The same is true in addressing COVID-19 in our communities. The New York City Health Department has been trying to put equity at the center of all aspects of its COVID-19 response, and that includes improving access to vaccines and information about vaccines. Next slide. So we have another question. Can you tell me what percentage of New York City adults, you can say, great, what percentage of New York City adults have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine? And you can drop those in the chat. What percentage do you think of the adults in New York City have gotten at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine? Any guesses? Yeah, feel free to guess.
Lots of guesses.
Great.
67, 60. Oh, go ahead. You want to read them?
60%, 80%. Okay, some pretty high. 90%. Great. Great. These are great.
Drum roll, please.
Yes, drum roll, please. What's the answer? Right. So it's currently about 3 in 4 of New York City adults have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. Okay, and this is about almost 75%, right? So almost 3/4 of New York adults. And this is information that's current as of today. Okay, we know that we've been seeing numbers rising. Next quiz question. What percentage of New York City adults are fully vaccinated? And we're going to talk a little bit more about what fully vaccinated means. So not just one dose, they've gotten 2. Okay, how many do you think? I see 60%, 50%, 55%. Great. So people are guessing a little less. Yeah. Great. Can you show us, Bryce, what's the actual percentage? So over 2 and 3, we're at 68% of adult New Yorkers being fully vaccinated. And those are numbers as of today. So that's really great. You can see here the incredible progress that we've made in New York City in the last few months in quickly delivering vaccines to people in our communities. And we don't have the numbers for young adults, but we're seeing the same thing as well in our communities of young people, that they're also increasing access to vaccines. So we're gonna go back in time now and talk a little bit about how the vaccines were studied and tested before they were approved and available for use. So let's explain what even is a vaccine. Vaccines work by helping people develop immunity, so that's protection from a disease. And that's so that their body can defend them against the disease. In developing the COVID-19 vaccines, scientists built on many years of research from other vaccines, including research on vaccines for other coronaviruses. So to develop the COVID-19 vaccines, billions of dollars were given so that hundreds of scientists from around the world could work on the vaccines nonstop. So now we know there was knowledge base already existing around how to develop vaccines. So for folks that are wondering, why did it happen so fast? Well, there was already a basis for developing this. And then we pulled in so many experts, right, to develop them. We gave billions of dollars, hundreds of scientists from around the world, getting them to work on this nonstop because the need was so urgent. So this is also really unique to have so many people working on the same goal all over the world. And that's why we needed all hands on deck to move this quicker. When scientists develop a new vaccine, it's important to know that they first test it in a lab. And so if the tests are successful, they do clinical trials, which means scientists find out if the vaccine works or not by giving participants in the clinical trials a substance that is not the vaccine. And then the other portion of participants get the actual vaccine that's being tested. So we're going to listen to a quick video on the next slide that's going to describe a little bit more about what we're talking about when it comes to the clinical trials and the research that went into developing the vaccines.
Quick content warning also that the video is going to show some needles and syringes. So just heads up on that. Take care of yourselves however you need to. And please let me know if anybody can't hear the video.
A vaccine's efficacy rate is calculated in large clinical trials when the vaccine is tested on tens of thousands of people. Those people are broken into 2 groups. Half get the vaccine and half get a placebo. Then they're sent out to live their lives while scientists monitor whether or not they get COVID-19 over several months. In the trial for Pfizer-BioNTech, for example, there were 43,000 participants. In the end, 170 people were infected with COVID-19. And how those people fall into each of these groups determines a vaccine's efficacy. If the 170 were evenly split, that would mean you're just as likely to get sick with the vaccine as without it, so it would have a 0% efficacy. If all 170 were in the placebo group and 0 people who got the vaccine were sick, the vaccine would have an efficacy of 100%. With this particular trial, there were 162 in the placebo group and just 8 in the vaccine group. It means those who had the vaccine were 95% less likely to get COVID-19.
Thank you so much for that, Bryce.
Oh.
Oh, it froze, actually.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what happened?
The vaccine had a
that was weird.
95%
We're good?
efficacy. Now, this doesn't mean if 100 people are vaccinated, 5 of them will get sick. Instead, that 95% number applies to the individual. So each vaccinated person is 95% less likely than a person without a vaccine to get sick each time they're exposed to COVID-19. And every vaccine's efficacy rate is calculated in the same way. But each vaccine's trial might be done in very different circumstances. These efficacy numbers really just tell you what happened in each vaccine's trial, not exactly what will happen in the real world. But many experts argue this isn't even the best number to judge a vaccine by anyway, because preventing any infection at all is not always the point of a vaccine.
The goal of a vaccine program for COVID-19 is not necessarily to get to COVID-0, but it's to tame this virus, to defang it, to remove its ability to cause serious disease, hospitalization, and death.
It helps to look at the different outcomes of an exposure to COVID-19 like this. The best case scenario is you don't get sick at all. The worst case is death. In between, there's being hospitalized, severe to moderate symptoms, or having no symptoms at all. In the absolute best circumstances, vaccines give you protection all the way to here. But realistically, that isn't the main objective of COVID-19 vaccines. The real purpose is to give your body enough protection to cover these possibilities. So if you do get an infection, it feels more like a cold than something you'd be hospitalized for. And this is one thing that every one of these COVID-19 vaccines do well. In all these trials, while some people in the placebo groups were hospitalized or even died from COVID-19, not one fully vaccinated person in any of these trials was hospitalized or died from COVID-19.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Bryce. And I hope that that video shed light on why the vaccines we'll be talking about today are safe and effective. Next slide. So this is the next quiz question. True or false? The COVID-19 vaccines do not contain any COVID-19 virus in them. Feel free to let us know whether you think it's false or true in the chat.
I see lots of false.
Great. So drum roll, Bryce.
Shocking.
Right. So true. COVID-19 vaccines actually do not have COVID-19 in them, so they cannot give you the virus. So some of us might have heard of other vaccines that work by giving people a small part of a virus, like the chickenpox vaccine. COVID-19 vaccines work differently to provide the protection against the virus. So we're going to talk a little bit about that technology right now. So all 3 of the COVID-19 vaccines currently available in the US work in similar ways. The main difference is the messenger that's being used to enter the body and send the message to your immune system. So think of it like when someone sends you a voice note or a Snapchat. They're being sent from different types of programs, but they both can communicate the same message to you. So the technology for both vaccines have been studied for decades, and both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which are messenger RNA or mRNA vaccines, work with mRNA molecules. So these molecules enter the body to provide instructions to your cells. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is an adenovirus vector vaccine. So that vaccine uses an adenovirus instead of a molecule to bring the message into the body. And just so that you understand, an adenovirus is a virus that causes a common cold, but the one that's used in the J&J vaccine was modified so that it cannot multiply or cause disease in people. Okay, so you can click through. Once in the body, the vaccines provide your cells with genetic information to teach your body how to code for a protein that is found on COVID-19 virus. So again, none of the vaccines contain the virus that causes COVID-19, only a code to teach your body to make the antibodies, which help soldier cells to be able to recognize and fight COVID-19 virus if you're ever exposed to it. So it's also important to know that none of the vaccines available will affect or interact with a person's DNA. Okay, they're not going to change your DNA. They're not going to cause you to mutate or any of some of that stuff that you might have seen. Next slide. So we're going to try to explain this another way. We're going to watch this TikTok video that went viral for being a little, lighthearted and explaining how vaccine technologies work.
So this video, this is as loud as it goes. So we might have to get a little close to our computer to hear it. And we can also play it twice just to make sure that everybody follows along.
You need to make this. What is it? It's a part of a virus. A virus? Just a part of it, not the actual virus. They're called COVID-19. They have 4 cans and they're coming. 4 cans? Please. What is this? This messenger told me to make them. I've never seen these before. I'll make some new antibodies, get rid of them. Seize the forks. Nice body. Gonna make this place my new home. 4 cans. Seize them.
Okay, so one more time, just so that we're all make sure that we're good. We know what the video is saying. Okay.
You need to make this. What is it? It's a part of a virus. A virus? Just a part of it, not the actual virus. They're called COVID-19. They have 4 cans and they're coming. 4 cans? Please. What is this? This messenger told me to make them. I've never seen these before. I'll make some new antibodies, get rid of them. Seize the forks. Nice body. Gonna make this place my new home. 4 cans. Seize them.
Okay.
So we hope that was a little, a different way of understanding how that vaccine technology works in being able to identify the virus if it should come into contact with your body. I'm going to turn it over to Bryce now, who's going to talk a little bit more about how well the vaccines work.
Thank you. Yeah. And of course, as we said in the beginning, if there are any questions that are going through your mind while you're watching these videos, while we're talking about it, please put them in the chat. We have Dr. Malhotra answering some of them right now, and then we'll have more time at the end for more questions as well. So we know from the clinical trials that all 3 of the trials that were done originally, that the vaccines are safe and effective for all different genders, age groups, ethnicities, all of the different people who were in the studies, that it was very safe for them to get the vaccine. We also found from the research that the vaccine was extremely effective, like really, really good at preventing hospitalizations and death. So this is really the main reason why vaccination is so important, because it can stop some of the more serious side effects of getting the coronavirus. And we know already that in the US, the vaccines have prevented thousands of deaths, which is a wonderfully happy thing. But on the other side, unfortunately, almost all of the current hospitalizations and deaths that have still been happening are among people who are not vaccinated, which can be very upsetting. But we also know that it's because their body doesn't have that added protection. In addition to the things that we do know about vaccines, we've been talking a little bit about this already, but we're not 100% sure about some things about the vaccines. Like, for example, the doctor was talking about in the chat that we know that the vaccines will protect us at least 6 to 8 months, but they're still doing research into it and trying to make sure that we can find out to know exactly when the best time for everyone to potentially get a booster, or if some groups will not need boosters while other groups will need them sooner. They're not sure yet. So they're continuing to do research into whether or not this might be something that needs a booster shot every year versus they only need 1 more booster shot. It'll really depend on how that research continues to come out. And we don't know yet exactly when these vaccines will be approved for children who are younger than 12 years old. They're still trying to do research into when that will come out. They're doing trials already. So the good news is that fully vaccinated people are far less likely to get or spread COVID-19. So we do know at least that these vaccines are safe and that they keep others around them safe, as well as the person who is vaccinated. So wonderful. I see some questions coming in the chat, so I'm going to let Dr. handle those and we'll keep on going. I have another question for you all. If someone has already had COVID-19, should they still get vaccinated? What do you think? Type some answers in the chat. I see A, yes, they're saying people should still get vaccinated. Lots of A, yes, lots of yes. Wonderful, yeah, see, y'all are already in the know. Exactly. It is still a recommendation if someone has already had COVID-19 to still get vaccinated, because unfortunately, we do know that having COVID-19 once doesn't mean that someone can't get COVID-19 again. So if they are vaccinated, there's a much lower chance that COVID-19 could infect them for a second time. And if someone were to get COVID-19 once they are vaccinated, then we know that their side effects would be much lower, much more able to deal with than if someone was not vaccinated. So that's another reason why it's recommended. So let's talk a little bit about getting vaccinated. So if someone wants in New York State, and we're living in New York City, so specifically here for us, there are so many sites around the city where anyone who's 12 or older can get vaccinated. So since we have a lot of teens on the call with us today, we want to make sure that we talk a little bit about if you're under the age of 16, then it's really important that you bring a parent or guardian with you. Or if, let's say, a parent or guardian is unavailable that day, then they can designate another family member or a neighbor or someone that they trust to take you with them to the vaccine site, because anyone who's under the age of 16 needs an adult to come with them so that they can say how old this person is. They can say how old you are and confirm that. And also because this is something that, this is a medical thing, and we want to make sure that everyone feels safe and protected. So one other newer thing, which is really awesome, is that people can now get vaccinated at home. So if someone would prefer to have the vaccine in their house, or if they are, like we were talking about in the chat before, immunocompromised, so let's say leaving the house could be dangerous, or there might be another reason why they would prefer to have someone come to their home and do the vaccine, they can definitely do that as well. There are many options, and both you and your parent or guardian will have to consent to get the vaccine. So on the day of, when someone is going to get vaccinated, the medical providers will also ask them, is this something that you want to do? Are you okay with getting vaccinated? Because they want to make sure that everyone understands what's happening and that they are consenting or saying, yes, I want to get vaccinated. Now, obviously, if anyone is 18 or older on this call, then you can go on your own because you are a legal adult. And all you got to do is make sure that you bring an ID to prove that you are 18 plus. I don't know if y'all knew this, but also New York City is offering an extra $100 to anyone who gets vaccinated through one of our vaccine finder sites, through the city sites, or by calling 877-VAX4NYC and setting up an appointment that way. Like I said before, also the in-home vaccinations can also get people that extra $100. So it's definitely worth asking if someone is making an appointment to get vaccinated soon, if they would like to receive that extra $100 bonus. And I think we'll put in the chat the vaccine finder website and the phone number, just in case people would like to check it out either a little bit later or while we're going through the topics. Also wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that there is extra support for teens with disabilities. So through Vax for NYC, that same phone number, sorry, not the same phone number, that same website, there is also a way to request an accommodation. And what will happen is the hub will recommend the most appropriate site for that person and or schedule an in-home vaccination for them. So I think we can also put that in the chat. There is a slightly separate phone number if people want to be connected directly to the call center for people who have disabilities who might want a little bit of extra help getting vaccinated. So perfect. Thank you so much, Vivian, for putting that in the chat. So again, Any questions about parents or guardians, it can seem a little tricky, but the basic take-home message is if you are 12 years or older, you can get vaccinated. If you're 12 to 15, you just have to bring an adult with you, versus if you're 16 plus, you have to bring identification to prove your age. And anyone who is under the age of 18 also wouldn't be able to get any vaccine other than the Pfizer one, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we don't want any surprises. We want people to completely understand what is going to happen when they go to get vaccinated. We recommend that you dress appropriately. You know, it's been kind of rainy and then sunny and then hot these past couple of days. So check the forecast. Most places you won't have to wait anymore, like back in January when there were really long lines. Now people can just walk in if they don't want to make an appointment. So you shouldn't have to wait too long, but we always recommend to plan ahead in terms of the weather. And like we were talking about before, making sure that you bring some form of identification with you. Now, if someone is under the age of 16, they also need to bring that parent or guardian with them to be their proof of identification, basically. You will also have to keep a mask on the entire time that you're in the site. So make sure that it's a face covering that is comfortable for you, that you can breathe in for, let's say, an hour or so. But we do want to make sure that people are wearing something that's comfortable, that they won't feel like they have to take off. Once you arrive, you'll be checked in, and then very shortly after, you will see your vaccinator. So if you'll notice in this little picture, Dolly Parton decided when she got vaccinated to wear this little cold shoulder shirt, so that it would be very easy to vaccinate her. And so your fashion choices are up to you. But if, let's say, you ever wore something that you couldn't get to your upper arm, no worries. You can ask the vaccinator for a more private space, and they will make sure that you are fully covered so that you can comfortably show them your upper arm so that someone can get vaccinated. Afterwards, you will get your CDC card that has the information of which vaccine that the person got, and your name, your date of birth, all of that information on there. So very important to hold on to that card. And then you'll be instructed to wait about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on if it's the first dose, second dose. Some sites are a little different, but the reason why they really make people hang out for a little bit in the center is to make sure that everyone feels okay. Most people are completely fine when they get vaccinated, but there are some people, it's rare, that can sometimes feel uncomfortable, very warm, or kind of feel like an allergic reaction is happening, which sometimes feels like their throat can feel a little itchy. They can feel very warm, or just kind of out of it, a little uncomfortable. So there are medical providers in all sites to make sure that everyone is feeling okay before they leave. If someone is getting Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, they also need to set up their second dose appointment. And so most of the time while they're waiting, that's what the staff in the center will do, so that they spend their time wisely, and also so that they make sure that they'll be able to come back to get their second dose of those two vaccines 3 to 4 weeks later. Also a great idea, just in case you're someone who might be a little bit forgetful, to take a picture of your vaccine card on the phone, if you bring your phone with you, so that just in case the vaccine card goes missing, you'll still have that first dose information on the phone. So, just in case, there are lots of people in this world who do not like needles, who get a little bit nervous when it comes to any sort of medical visit. We have some recommendations that could be used to make the experience a little bit better, hopefully alleviate some of that anxiety that some people might have. So if you can, bring some headphones or earbuds so that you can listen to music. You can try and concentrate on something else in the room. Maybe someone has like some really cool shoes and you want to check out those shoes while you're not paying attention to the vaccine. Or really just start thinking about things that make you happy, like maybe some more friends and family that you might be able to see once you're fully vaccinated and don't, let's say, have to worry as much about getting COVID-19. Try as hard as you can to take some slow and deep breaths. In 1 second, we're actually going to do a quick activity together to practice some of that breathing. I don't know if y'all still have those fidget spinners, but I remember those being very popular a couple of years ago. But really anything that you can like squish in your hand, like a stress ball, those things can be helpful to kind of get rid of that nervous energy. And then also in terms of if someone is feeling like the vaccine might be a little painful if they don't like shots, if you can let your arm relax as much as possible, they have said that it can make the injection a little bit less painful. So these are just some things to try. If anyone would like to take a picture or a screenshot of this slide, feel free to do that. But I really want us to go through this breathing exercise quickly together because I work with high school age students. And so whenever we talk about ways to calm down, ways to feel a little less stressed in the moment, I've taught so many people this technique, and I learned it from meditation people a long, long time ago, because it is helpful. It has a tactile thing. So you use your hands and you're also breathing at the same time. So we're going to go through it together. If you feel comfortable and want to follow it along at home, that's great. If not, that's totally fine too. But all that you need are your two hands. And what you're going to do is while you trace up one finger, you're going to breathe in through your nose. So, and then when you trace down, you're going to breathe out of your mouth. So in the nose, out the mouth. Now, we only went through one hand, but if let's say it feels nice and people feel like they're calming or they're a little bit, their heart rate is a little lower, feel free to go through your other hand if you like. I've had some students tell me that they also like doing this because you can hide your hands under your desk. No one even has to know that you're doing it. But basically, it's just another technique to have in your tool belt in case you're ever feeling anxious or nervous. You can kind of trace your fingers, take some deep breaths, and hopefully it will help to distract a little bit from that moment. Wonderful. Okay, we have another quiz question for you. Some of y'all might have heard some things about this, so we want to clear it up. True or false? People who are pregnant, breastfeeding, or want to have a child in the future can get the COVID-19 vaccine. What do y'all think? True or false? I see lots of trues. Some true with a question mark. Yes. So y'all are extremely right. This is true. Anyone who is 12 or older, including people with underlying medical conditions, anyone who is pregnant or trying to get pregnant, can get the vaccine. And while they don't need permission from their doctor to get the vaccine, it's important that if they want to talk to their doctor about being pregnant and getting vaccinated, that of course they do that. But all of the current evidence that's come out about after the thousands and thousands of people who have been vaccinated is that there is no risk to pregnant or breastfeeding people, as well as no risk to people who want to become pregnant in the future. There is no evidence that the vaccines can cause infertility in anyone. So we do unfortunately know, though, that COVID-19 infection, so getting COVID-19, can actually cause serious illness in pregnant people and in people who have a weakened immune system, like people who are pregnant. So people who are pregnant are actually recommended to get the COVID-19 vaccine to try and keep their body as healthy and safe as possible. Groups like the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists and Society for Maternal and Fetal Medicine. So basically two leading organizations that represent a lot of reproductive health for people and obstetrics care, like people who are pregnant or breastfeeding, parenting, strongly recommend that anyone who is pregnant, nursing, or wants to become pregnant get vaccinated. They really are recommending it, as well as recently the CDC is also recommending it as well. So there is all this evidence to show that it is a good idea to get vaccinated if someone is pregnant or breastfeeding, and that it has no link to infertility at all. Now, what we do know about the vaccines is that there are some pretty common side effects. People do report some sort of side effects. What that usually is a sign of, though, is that their body is building the protection against it. It is important to understand that these side effects are completely expected, and that just because someone might not feel fantastic after getting a vaccine, it doesn't mean that they got COVID-19. It just means that they were having side effects from the vaccine. Some of those common ones are soreness or swelling in the arm where someone was vaccinated, as well as sometimes headache or body aches, feeling kind of tired. Some people do get a fever. And for the most part, people found that their side effects were a little bit stronger after their second dose of Moderna or Pfizer than after their first dose. But in most people, those side effects really tend to be mostly mild to moderate and only tend to last for a few days. Very serious allergic reactions are rare, but when they have happened, they tend to start usually within a few minutes to an hour after getting vaccinated, which is why it's so important for people to wait after they get their vaccine, make sure that they feel good before they leave so that we know that everyone's okay. And we also want to keep reminding people that COVID-19 infections, we are seeing in the research from people who have gotten COVID-19 that unfortunately that infection can cause some long-lasting side effects and some health conditions in people who have already had COVID, and we aren't necessarily seeing that in people who are vaccinated. So some other serious side effects that we do just want to make sure that people are aware of, even though they're extremely rare, very, very small chance that any of this would happen. We do want to talk a little bit about, there were some blood clots after people got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that mainly happened in people who were adult women older than 50. Some happened in adult men as well. But again, these were extremely rare. Same thing with people who had come down with Guillain-Barré, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that perfectly, syndrome after the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which usually can show up as muscle weakness, nerve damage, or sometimes paralysis. Most people did recover from those things, but there were some people who unfortunately did have permanent damage afterwards. Again, very small number of people though. And then there were some people who experienced heart inflammation. So basically a swelling of the heart after getting Pfizer or Moderna vaccinations. So this inflammation of the heart and the surrounding tissues of the heart mostly happened in young adolescent boys and other adolescents. But there was a very quick improvement with treatment and rest. So what was happening was that as people were reporting these different side effects, the CDC and the command center that was taking all of the side effect information was trying to make sure that people knew how to best handle it if these side effects happened, but they were very, very rare. Experts continue to recommend that anyone who is 12 or older get these vaccines because the benefits of getting vaccinated far outweigh the small risk of having one of these side effects. So, what do y'all think? Do people still need to wear a mask after getting vaccinated? This is our last quiz question, by the way, so let's finish strong. What have you been hearing? I see lots and lots of yes. Someone said, see, yeah, sometimes. It's a good point, definitely. Okay, so yes, after someone is fully vaccinated, you may need to wear a face covering in certain different places. So for example, when people are outside, especially where people can social distance and have air around them where they're not in an enclosed place, they're pretty safe once they are fully vaccinated to not necessarily wear a mask if they choose not to. But our advice is to always keep a face covering with you because you never know other people's vaccination status, and you also don't necessarily know if, let's say, you need to go into a store or if you have to get on the train, places where masks are required. It's very important that people bring it. So places like school or other businesses might still require that people wear masks. So it's important that they bring a mask with them. But again, we also want people to know that this is your body and your choice. So even after someone is vaccinated, if they want to continue wearing a mask for as long as feels safe to them, go ahead. No one hopefully should make you feel bad about covering your nose and mouth and making yourself feel as safe as possible. One other thing that we just wanted to make a note of also is that if people are fully vaccinated, then they don't necessarily need to quarantine themselves after they get exposed. They just need to make sure that they can get tested afterwards and check in on if they test positive or not. Many people who are vaccinated can come in contact with others who might have COVID-19 and not necessarily get the virus. So that's the whole point. We're going to move along a little bit because we're talking more about after vaccination. So we recommend that you talk to your family and friends about what your experience was like, because getting vaccinated is the surest way to protect yourself from severe illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. So we want people to spread the word as much as possible. Share on social media if you like. Make sure that if you are taking pictures, though, while someone is getting vaccinated, that they are asking permission if they're vaccinators in the photo, and also to cover any personal information before sharing things like your vaccine card on social media. It's really important, though, that you are explaining what your decision-making was, like how you decided to potentially get vaccinated, because it can share for other people in your life, other loved ones, why they might want to as well. And I think a lot of times too, people have heard so many things online from strangers in different places that sound very scary, but then when they have their own experience, they have a far better experience. So hearing that from more loved ones and people that we trust can also help us make those decisions a little bit better. We also wanted to make sure that we say, because we might not have mentioned it before, that people are not considered fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after their second dose of Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, which means that it would take about, trying to do the math, at least a month and a half before someone would be fully vaccinated from the time that they first got their vaccine until they are fully vaccinated. So we just want to send you off today with some reminders that vaccines save lives. They really are here to help protect you and the people around you. They are safe and effective and help protect against serious illness, including hospitalization, death, and the potential long-term symptoms that unfortunately some people have faced from having the COVID-19 infection from the virus. COVID-19 vaccines are completely free and available regardless of anyone's immigration status. And vaccines really do move us closer to getting back to the people and things that we love. We really want to just make sure that we're all on the same page about that. And your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So we know that we've been talking lots about medical things and doctors and taking care of our bodies, but this has been, as Vivian said in the beginning, this has been a tough year and a half. So we really want to make sure that people take care of their mental health as much as possible. So we're going to have some, Vivian's going to put in the chat this information about a couple different organizations that we recommend that people reach out to if they want some resources, if they want to talk about how they've been feeling. The Door, Mount Sinai, both provide information and healthcare for young people, as well as counseling and crisis intervention. The Trevor Project is more focused on LGBT youth, but they also will speak to any youth that reach out to them, especially if someone is in crisis or really not feeling great. And New York Project Hope was specifically created around COVID. So if someone has questions or is feeling very stressed or just having lots of emotions and feelings, which are completely normal about this past year and a half, we recommend that they reach out to New York Project Hope so that they can get any and all resources that they may need. So thank you so much for putting those in the chat. And yes, of course, we wanted to make sure that we ended with enough time to ask questions and to go through some of the ones that might have been in the chat from before. But what I think we are going to do before we transition over to our wonderful doctor for the day is we have the link in the chat. If people wouldn't mind quickly taking a minute or two to just fill out the post test, it is also anonymous and very similar to the one that you did in the beginning. But we also wanted to thank you so much for your time and attention today. We really hope that you enjoyed, that you learned some information, and that we'll be able to answer even more of your questions in a minute.
Thank you so much, Bryce. I've seen a lot of great questions, and a big thank you to Dr. Malhotra, who has been responding to many in the chat as well. But we are trying to have some rich discussion for the last few minutes that we have of this presentation. And we'll elevate as well. We understand that those on the live stream might not have seen many of the questions that are coming up in the chat. So we're going to, Dr. Malhotra, feel free to start, if you wanted to highlight any of the questions that you responded to that came up in the chat. I think this is a good time to start sharing some of that, especially for our YouTube participants.
Sure. I think the first question was that are there any long-term effects of the COVID vaccine? And they are very, very unlikely to have any long-term effects of the COVID vaccine. It was studied by the FDA. Like all vaccines, most of these effects occur within 6 weeks of getting a vaccine, and they were studied for over 2 months, and they have not found any long-term effects of the COVID vaccine. So that was one of the main questions that was asked. We don't know about the COVID vaccine and its effect on people who have a weakened immune system. People with the weakened immune system have like underlying diseases like cancer, or they're on medications that can weaken your immune system. A healthy person is not considered to have a weakened immune system. The elderly and sometimes the very young, like the little babies, like 1-2 month olds, are considered to also have like a weakened immune system, and so those are the two populations that we don't really know what the effect of the COVID vaccine has on them, if they can actually mount a proper response. There was a question about boosters. It's still ongoing. We do know that the vaccines have been very effective, and they have been able to, mount a vaccine protection for up to 6 to 8 months. So that's very strong in healthy patients. We don't know for the immunocompromised, which are the people with the weakened immune system, if that's the same. And so that's why recently the FDA has recommended that people with severe, like moderate to severe weakened immune systems, like people who have cancer or who have transplants, they get a booster. At the moment, that is the only group that's being recommended for boosters. But of course, they're constantly monitoring and seeing, if they were going to change or make any other recommendations. But so far, the vaccines have been effective for at least 6 to 8 months. I don't know, what were some of the other questions? Can you?
Sure. I saw a question about antibodies and whether we should be testing people for their antibody count, and a little bit about that. Can you describe?
Right. Once you're fully vaccinated, and fully vaccinated means 2 weeks after a vaccination, we have 3 vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines need two shots, 3 to 4 weeks apart, depending upon the vaccine. For kids who are less than 12, they only, above 12, from 12 to 18, the vaccine that's only approved is the Pfizer vaccine, and that's to be given 3 weeks apart. So the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines need to be given 2 doses, and then have to be 2 weeks after that, and they're considered fully vaccinated. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is 1 vaccine, and then 2 weeks later, you're considered fully vaccinated. You do not need to, it is not recommended to do any antibody levels or any antibody tests. The only thing that they, if you've noticed that some restaurants and some gyms are now starting to require, is that you show proof of your vaccination. And so the best one is the CDC vaccination card that you will get upon your vaccination. If you lose the vaccination card, it's recommended to go to ask the vaccination provider how you can get another record of it. Mm-hmm. But that's what's required. Also, I think in New York City, we have the Excelsior Pass, which can also be proof of vaccination.
Another question that I believe you answered, but just to make sure that the people on the YouTube as well here, are people able to get vaccine while they might be sick?
Well, if you have COVID-like symptoms, we recommend that you get COVID tested and wait and if you're COVID positive, you actually have the disease, and so you wait the 10 days, and your symptoms improve, and then after you've recovered, then get the COVID vaccine. You don't want to actually have the COVID disease and go to a vaccination center and expose other people, and so it's recommended to isolate. So that is the reason.
Definitely, yeah. We want to keep everybody as safe as possible. One other question in the chat was about if there are specific studies for people who are in the teen to young adult age group, about who had gotten the vaccine and like how effective it was for that group. Can you speak at all to the trials or anything about the younger ages?
I don't know the specific trials, but I do know that the CDC has been monitoring safely for that age group as well as the adult population, and they have found it's actually historic. This particular vaccine has gotten more safety monitoring than any other vaccine in U.S. in U.S. history. So, including that age group, I don't have the specific studies, but I think that they can be looked at in the CDC site.
Wonderful.
Dr. Malhotra, there was another question, and I think it might speak to contents of the vaccine. Could you talk we talked a little bit about the vaccine technology, but we mentioned there's mRNA in it, and like what is the vaccine made of? Can you tell us what is included inside?
So the COVID vaccine, the three approved COVID vaccines, there are two which are the messenger RNA vaccines, which are the which is the Moderna and the COVID and the Pfizer, and you have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. These do not have the COVID virus in it at all. They do not have any form of the virus. All that the vaccines have is the genetic information to that you're injected in, and it's basically to fool your body, trick your body to thinking that, and it gives you the genetic information, the material that it gives you is for your body to make a specific protein that's found on the COVID virus. It's the spike protein, and it tricks your body to making antibodies and mount a response. And so it's important because now your body has the ammunition and the soldiers to fight this fight the virus. So if you actually in the future were to get exposed to the COVID vaccine, you're not going to, you have the army ready to fight it. And so that's why you don't get severely sick or sick at all, So that's is that what you were asking?
Yeah, and I think also just I've seen people mention like like the actual like what's in the liquid, like did it come from animals or people? No. Like it's not right. Like it basically has its contents that mimic what is already in our bodies. And so if you could I know sugars, and I don't know if there's any.
Yeah, the COVID vaccine has fats and sugars and acids, and salts, but it doesn't, which are found in a lot of food products. It doesn't have any blood products. It has no antibiotics. It has no fetal tissue. It has no metals. It has no pork and no animal products. And it doesn't have the COVID virus.
Thank you so much for that.
And also we had talked a little bit before, because there's a question in there about where they got the mRNA. And there have been different coronaviruses in the past, like we had talked about in the beginning, where scientists have found that if they can isolate that one little piece and put it into the vaccines, they can reproduce it so much faster, and it can be safer for people to get them. So it's great that there's been already research happening for so many years that they were able to build on as well.
Right. It's been decades, or more than 30 years of research on this type of technology, especially the messenger RNA technology. The Johnson & Johnson virus technology is not new. This is just a weakened virus. It's actually the common cold, and you don't get it. They mutate it and make it so you don't get sick from it. And they actually bring the same genetic material of the spike protein to your body. It's just a different way of bringing it. The messenger RNA is the new technology, but it's been studied for decades.
Right. So the question, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, to clarify it, because I think there's a participant that just wants to understand a little bit more clearly. Are we saying that the mRNA that's in the current vaccine came from other COVID viruses of the past?
I think that there were studies done on other COVID viruses to make that technology, but I think now it's being manufactured, in the companies.
Right, and you could think of it like once someone makes a blueprint for how to build something, then it's so much easier to just plug a different virus or a different agent, like a different cell into that same blueprint. But because that blueprint has existed, like we were just talking about, for decades, it was easier for them to isolate that one gene and put it in.
That's why they were able to do it in 4 months.
Are there any other questions? And I also want to make sure I ask our colleagues that are monitoring the YouTube chat if there are any from YouTube that we want to elevate here and we don't see.
So far, we don't have any questions on YouTube.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bryce.
Oh, it says, where do the nanoparticles go that encapsulate the mRNA?
The mRNA goes into the cytoplasm. It never goes into the nucleus. It doesn't alter your DNA. It's only telling the cell, the structures in your cytoplasm, in your cell, to make a protein, which is the spike protein. So they, and your body then remembers this, how to make this antibody to this spike protein of the COVID and how to fight it. So it doesn't go anywhere else other than into the cytoplasm of your cell. And it does not alter or change your DNA. It never enters your nucleus.
And I will also put the link in the chat in case people want to check out that TikTok again. I know it's very fast, but I feel like it gives a great description of once the body knows these instructions, it just melts that agent away. It gets rid of that messenger. It's like, okay, we don't need you anymore. And it continues to make the copies to keep the person safe. So in case anyone wants to check it out, I put it back in the chat.
Great. Any other questions that we want to elevate? I know there was a question that tried to get at privacy and the mandates that have come out that we know that are slowly being put into effect by the mayor. I don't know, Dr. Malhotra, if you wanted to speak a little bit about the reasons for the mandates and whether that is going against privacy.
It's not going against privacy. We're in a pandemic, and this is a public health crisis. So this is not an invasion of privacy. It's to protect the community. And so that's why that is the ethical reasoning behind it, that it is for safety and well-being of everybody.
Yeah, and I would say that I just wanted to touch on this because I know I've heard a lot of it on social media. The does it go against HIPAA laws and that kind of concern? And in HIPAA laws, for people that don't understand them well, they're more to protect your information, like when doctors have access to it. They should not be disclosing to parties your medical information that's supposed to be held private. But in terms of sharing, your status, vaccination status, there has been historical precedents, right? So like it has happened before that sometimes we need to show proof of vaccination or a job, or even for school. For some of us, we a lot. I mean, I remember being a little kid and my mom carrying around my vaccine passport, right? That showed my school everything that I have had to date. And so that, that's kind of the history that exists already that supports what Dr. Malhotra mentioned about it being necessary to replicate because of the urgency right now. And that still doesn't take away from the fact that it is the individual's choice to get vaccinated, whether or not to get vaccinated. And yet at the same time, we're seeing, safety precautions being requested across, different businesses or establishments in our cities and in our communities.
Right. And I don't know if I mentioned this before when we were talking about masks in different places, but you all have probably heard this on the news, heard people talking about it. By September 13th, there might be more and more places like eating out, going to gyms. There might be a lot of places where a vaccine card is required. And then other places where, as long as someone is wearing a mask, then that is okay for that location. So it really depends on the place. And exactly like we've been talking about, it's all about trying to keep as many people as possible safe. There is another question in the chat that says, are there specialists we can go to get more information about the science of the vaccine, like to become more educated about the scientific aspects?
You can speak to your own pediatrician, and you can always go to the CDC site to have more medical scientific evidence that's being supported for the vaccine.
Yes, and I had dropped it in earlier, but even our health department website has the information in different sections. So like if you wanted to learn more about just vaccines, you can visit that. You can also visit the Pfizer and Moderna pages to learn more about that actual brand of vaccine. But if you wanted to visit even the health department website, you'll see information on our city. You'll see how many of our, like we showed in the polling, how many of our adults are vaccinated, how many of our young people are vaccinated, which boroughs have high or low vaccination or case counts. There's a lot of data on what's happening right now with the pandemic, and also specifically to our city and our community. So you can definitely feel free to visit and educate yourself more about it.
I was just going to say, thank you for putting the CDC. I was just going to say we could put that in there too. So thanks so much.
Okay. Are there any other questions, in the chat or on the YouTube, or even from our colleagues that you think we might have missed or should cover before we sign off?
We don't see any other question on YouTube. I think we pretty much covered all the question in the chat as well.
I went back through again and just double checked. The only other question was in there was really more about, like, maybe if we want to speak a little bit to why some people might not want to get vaccinated, why they, even if they are someone who is, let's say, at risk, they're immunocompromised, why it might still be a difficult decision.
I'm not sure now why it is a difficult decision. Personally, I'm a mother. I have a 16-year-old son. I have a 92-year-old mother-in-law. My parents are elderly, and my husband. We're all fully vaccinated, and I feel very, very safe in this current environment. And that's a personal thing. It is a personal decision, but I do feel that the COVID vaccine is our best ammunition against fighting this pandemic, and getting us back to the normal that we used to know. So I think that people might be scared, but I think I think we should be empowered that this vaccine is something that can protect us and is our best fight against this virus. It prevents us from being severely sick, from being hospitalized, and from dying. So it's that's my personal intake on why people may not be vaccinated, but I strongly encourage that they reconsider.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
I was also just going to say, some of the things that I've heard, and I think as more information came out, I think it has helped many people with the concerns that they had before. So, I had friends that were pregnant or just had a baby, and they didn't know like what it would do, if it would pass through the breast, like all kind, concerns about just the information not having been released or updated yet. I know, concerns about this happened so fast, and then learning that actually we had a lot of history and science that already existed to help us move forward. And I agree with you, Dr. Malhotra. I would share that for myself as well. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so she can't get vaccinated, even if we wanted to get her vaccinated. I got vaccinated, my partner got vaccinated, all of the grandparents got vaccinated. At first, we were really worried about, we have, a 99-year-old great grandma in the house still. So we really were worried about protecting them because they are vulnerable populations. So we know, like, all of us getting vaccinated makes it harder for us to catch the COVID virus and then also to spread it. And right now, with what's happening with the Delta variant, which we didn't talk a lot about this, we mentioned Delta variant, but I just want people who are still on the call to understand that this is what viruses do. And so that video that we shared earlier about, like, the goal of vaccines isn't always to prevent you from getting sick with it. It's to protect you from the most serious, severe outcomes like death or hospitalization. But viruses are smart. They mutate. That's what they do. They kind of figure out how to, every time they jump from person to person, they're trying to learn and figure out how to get around and get the person sick by becoming stronger. And so with the Delta variant out right now, I'm very concerned. My daughter is 4, and I don't know if she's going to be safe in pre-K if people aren't putting on their masks or aren't vaccinated around her. And so for us, it really is about community, and we get it to protect not just myself as a person, but the people that I care around me, and the loved ones that I have in my life. Yes, Nuruz, I see you have a hand.
Yes, I believe there is a question on YouTube. Dior, would you like to flag it for Dr. Malhotra?
Yes. So Jada asked, what is the reason for severity of side effects of the vaccine in some age groups rather than others? I saw a situation where a woman began to get muscle spasms after she got fully vaccinated.
So there are, with the vaccine, some people have no side effects. Some people have side effects such as, the most common one is like, at the site of the vaccination, your arm is swollen, or it can be painful or just tender. You can get sometimes fever or feel tired, or a headache, or body aches. They last for just a few days, and it's actually your body fight. It's good to have these side effects because they help you fight. It's saying that the vaccine's working, that your body's mounting some sort of an immune response to the vaccine, that it's being tricked to thinking that it is the COVID virus, but it's not. So there are a few rare severe side effects, but they are so rare that the risks. The FDA as well as the advisory committee on vaccinations has monitored them and are continuing to monitor them, and they're saying that we are still recommending vaccination in everybody above 12 years of age, because having the COVID virus is actually can potentially give you more problems than actually getting a vaccine.
Yeah. And thank you so much for talking a little bit about that as well, because as we were all talking before about like different reasons why maybe people were waiting, one of those things too was to see more people get vaccinated and see how safe it really is. Millions and millions of people have been vaccinated, and only a very, very small number of people have had any sort of serious side effect. Most people yeah, their arm feels kind of annoying for a day or two, and then they're completely back to themselves. So I think the other thing too that helped a lot of people, like for example, my mom waited quite a bit to get her vaccines, but she did get fully vaccinated. So I'm happy about that. But she really wanted to see what was going on in the world. She wanted to wait a little bit. We have, some history in this country that isn't so fantastic to different groups of people. So it's understandable that people want to be educated. They want to understand how the vaccine works, how other people feel. And now that we have so much research to show that most people are going to be safer, healthier, more able to live their life without worrying about getting COVID than the people who are not vaccinated, hopefully it can help more and more people to understand the benefits of being vaccinated versus not being vaccinated. I don't see any other questions over here.
No.
Nothing else on the YouTube side.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully we answered most people's questions, most of the questions. I do encourage you, if you did not get a chance to complete the post test, it gives us an opportunity to find out if there was something that still we should have addressed that we didn't. We really work hard to improve our education on this topic because we know it's really timely and important for our communities. So if you have a minute, feel free to complete that post test. And it really, just so you know, it helps us improve our presentation and the content that we're sharing in all of our communities. If nothing else, I really thank you again on behalf of the health department, Ms. Bryson, Dr. Malhotra, and myself. This was really an honor to be able to spend this afternoon with you for this amount of time and just to be able to share some knowledge. Thank you again. And thank you, Neuros. Thank you to DYCD.
Yes, and on behalf of the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development, I would like to thank Vivian, Ms. Malhotra, and also Ms. Bryce for hosting such an engaging session, and also to our audience. You guys had a lot of good questions, and you guys are engaged throughout the session. So thank you for attending. And if you're SYP participants, we're always here, right? So if you have any questions or any resources you'd like to be connected, please don't hesitate to reach out to your providers or DYCD. We're happy to help. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, DOHMH, and our excellent partners. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope everyone has a safe rest of their week and summer.